Welcome to the Rise and Wander podcast, where we'll explore adventure, spirituality, and empowerment through the outdoors and beyond. Join me, Carla Amador, as we focus on topics around the mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional benefits derived through the outdoors. You'll also hear inspiring stories, get educated, and more. Let's get started. This season's podcast is sponsored by Oboz Footwear, based out of Bozeman, Montana. I proudly wear my Oboz footwear for hiking, traveling, and more. They have many styles and options to choose from for all your winter and hiking needs. Looking for hiking boots, recovery shoes, or fast and light hikers? Look no further and check them out at obozfootwear.com. Join me for a year of hiking in 2025 with the 52 Hike Challenge. Commit to your personal journey outdoors alongside a supportive community and make 2025 your year of hiking. Take your family, friends, furry pets on an adventure they'll always cherish. Plus, you'll gain the physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional benefits derived through nature and hiking. Learn more and sign up at www.52hikechallenge.com. And see you on the trails. Welcome to Rise and Wander, episode 5 of the travel series. So far, we've talked about planning, budgeting, and packing lists. But today we're going to get into itineraries and other tips when you're on your actual trip. So let's go ahead and get started. For me, when I travel, I really like the book, and I've mentioned this before, Lonely Planet, because it has a ton of itinerary ideas. As you've already booked and know where you're going, now you can really sit down and start planning your day to day and doing the research. And you want to do this at least a couple months in advance, just to give you an idea of what your days are going to look like. And that'll also help you as you're booking your travel within the country. So for me, as I mentioned, when I'm planning the actual itinerary, I like using this book called Lonely Planet, and you can get it on your phone, download it onto your iPad or any sort of digital reader. You can also buy the book. You can rent it at the library. For me personally, I like it on my phone because then when I'm traveling, I don't have extra bulky materials and I can easily pull up information on my phone. It's really easy to use, has a ton of itinerary ideas. It breaks down each city or region, and then it gives you ideas on not only how much is it going to cost to sleep, eat, but also things to do. And it has recommendations. So it's really awesome, and I highly recommend it. Other things I like to do is I like to look at blogs. So let's just say that I'm going to Chile. I would do a search for top things to do in Chile. And then usually blogs will come up, resources, articles. So I like using that as a base as I'm putting together my itinerary, and also doing internet searches, which I was mentioning, that's where the blogs come in. But also, in addition to that, I really like using Pinterest because I can get visuals on places that I might want to go check out. I usually will put together a board for each country, and then I will add pins, and you can also look up different blogs from Pinterest. So then what I do is, and I thought this would be a really helpful recommendation, is I put together a document. It's usually a Google Doc because number one, it's online. Number two, it's easy for me to edit. And also, if I need to share this with friends and family, it's easy for me to forward them that and we can collaborate. I will basically write down the beginning of the trip from day one to the end of the trip. And I'll line up each day and date. And then I'll write in flight on, let's just say Monday. And I'll put all the flight details, and then I'll put in where I'm staying, the address, any important information, if there's a contact, all of that. Let's just go back to this example when I went to Chile and I was at the Atacama Desert. Let's just say it was Wednesday when I arrived. I put in my information for where I was staying. And then let's say Thursday, I was going to go to Valle de la Luna, and then I was gonna go do the lagoon the following day. So you see, it gives me a visual, but then as I'm planning the rest of the trip, I can move stuff around in case I'm like, oh, wait a minute, that conflicts with something. It also allows me to understand how much time I'm gonna spend in each place. I definitely think it's important to, as you're setting your itinerary, have some way that you're going to track that information. Of course, you could write it down, but then you can't really, it's not as easy to like move stuff around and erase stuff. That's why I recommend some online way of breaking down your itinerary. So, other things that I wanted to talk about is when you're on your trip, you've planned everything, you've booked your flights, you have your itinerary down. It's also good to be open and leave some time in your itinerary for things that I like to call the miracles of travel and things that I feel are really awesome that I've experienced on my trips. Sometimes I'll have a general idea of what I want to do, but then I also leave some open time because when I stay at certain places, I'll meet travel friends. And then there's been times where people have been like, hey, do you want to go do this trip together? Or do you want to go to do this other maybe activity that I was unaware of? So if I was so stuck on my itinerary, then that doesn't leave room for those miracles, for those connections, for those extra amazing things. I could go on and on of how many times in the past there were times where I would stuff up and fill up my itinerary, and then someone would be like, hey, do you want to go do this? And I'd be like, oh, I can't. I would definitely highly recommend like being open to connections, being open to travel partners if you're on your own. I've done a lot of solo travel. This has been one of the best ways for me to get out and do stuff and meet people. Once I was in Oaxaca and I went up to the hostel's rooftop lounge, and while I was up there, a really sweet girl came up to me and was asking me what I was up to. And she was like, want to join us on our trip? And I was like, sure. And we ended up going to this really amazing island called Chacagua. It was magical, had an amazing time, got to see the bioluminescence. And had I been like stuck on an itinerary, I would have been unable to do that. And then recently, when I was in Argentina, I ended up joining a girl on a hike, and one of the people that guided us is someone who lives in the area and ended up taking us to this second hike that was not the main hike that everyone goes on. And I remember he had said, you can go to the main hike and you're going to see 300 to 400 people, or you can go on this hike with me and it's going to be just us and this beautiful view. You still get the same view, it's going to be closer up. And so I was open and I went, and it was amazing. And there was almost no one on that part of the hike. And those are like the gems and the miracles of being open, going with the flow, letting the universe surprise you. There's so many experiences and times that I've just been like, I'm so grateful that I allowed myself to be open and to make these connections. And I got to experience something different and new. And it just made the trip that much more special. Other things that I want to talk about is to think about researching and doing some due diligence for the local customs, some basic words, maybe the history of places. This book that I always recommend, The Lonely Planet, has a lot of that and even has little phrases in the back that are helpful. And don't forget to download some sort of translator on your phone, a translation app. I use Google Translate, and usually what you have to do, it's pretty simple. You just have to download while you're on Wi-Fi the language that you're going to be using in another country. So, for example, when I was in Greece, I don't know Greek, and I would be able to sometimes type in my message and the person was able to read it on the other end. In addition, it also speaks it out. So it has been so helpful. And don't underestimate the gratitude and the joy people feel when you just try to say some basic things like konnichiwa in Japanese or gracias in Spanish, danke in German. Never underestimate the power in just trying and how much people really appreciate that. It's always really good to be aware of that. Other little tips are when you are in a country to get a local SIM card if you can. Of course, with every phone, there's going to be nuances. You might need to have your phone unlocked. There's tons of things to consider, but for me, I actually have a secondary phone that I bring when I travel, and I usually put a SIM card in it so that I can have Wi-Fi everywhere I'm going. Unfortunately, my current phone is not unlocked. I use it in a way like a hotspot, and that works. But it's just so that I'm always like, if anything happened and in case of an emergency, I have this secondary phone. And it's much cheaper, by the way. You can always call your phone company and ask them what they offer for travels or traveling packages. I think this one's a really big one that I wanted to jump into, and that is being flexible when you're traveling because things are not going to go according to plan. You're guaranteed that basically some things will probably not work out and you might miss a train, you might run into a delay. There's so many things that could possibly happen. So going with the attitude, I'm going to be flexible. And all of this is teaching us patience and it's teaching us letting go and surrender. And I think that's why I love traveling because you have to be flexible and adaptable to whatever is happening. You could get lost. So just be mindful that that is a part of the travel experience. And there was a couple of examples that I had. There was one time that I went to Costa Rica and we had plans to go do this beautiful outdoors day or a couple days. And then the car we had ended up failing on us. So we ended up going back to our stay and made the best of it. We still ended up having a wonderful time, but the trip and plans changed, and that was okay. Recently, when I was in Europe, there was a time where I wanted to catch a train and I tried booking it like a couple days in advance and they were sold out to the location. I was going to go to the Dolomites. And so I ended up having to take a bus, which was like 3 times longer. So these are the kinds of things that might happen on your trip. So one of the tips that I have with today and the internet making it so much more accessible is to look at what you want to do and then research if you need to buy tickets in advance. Because, for example, when I was in Europe once again, I remember I wanted to go to some museums and they were sold out like weeks in advance. Had I known, I would have booked my tickets in advance. So those are things to think about. Now you can book not only a lot of your stays, but even your travel, whether it's a train or a ferry. Getting it in advance is going to help you so that you're not like stuck at the last minute. Depending on how you're traveling, sometimes you just go with the flow, and that's a part of it. It's okay, well, it didn't work out. So it just depends. But if you really are like, I want to make sure to do these things, have your list. That's why it's important to set up that itinerary so you have an idea of what to expect. Other things that you might want to think about is why staying in hostels actually could be a good thing. Just so you know, there are a lot of really amazing hostels out there that are extremely affordable, and also you can get your own room. So don't think that a hostel means you're sharing a room, because I have many times stayed at hostels, and especially when I'm solo traveling, and that is where I meet and have made super amazing friends and travel partners. And I've had my own room, and there's some communal aspects to it. For example, not all hostels share a bathroom. You could possibly even have your own bathroom, but there are usually like shared kitchen facilities, shared eating areas, library, that kind of thing, lounges. So that's where you're able to make connections, meet people. And I feel like it's part of that journey. The other thing that I want to touch on today is travel can be exhausting, and travel can also take a toll. It can be challenging, from not understanding the language to feeling overwhelmed. We're going to talk about safety in the next episode, but I remember when I was in India, I had to ask for help. And there were a lot of times where I felt like frazzled and like the energy can be very challenging. I would say know your limits. You might want to start traveling locally and then like Europe next. And then after Europe, maybe you go to another country like Mexico. And from there, you can think about Thailand. And from Thailand, then you can do India. Just know that it's a progression. If you start off with like culture shock, it could be a lot. So I think you build up to certain destinations. So don't be afraid to start small, learn, and then ask a lot of questions. And also know that it's exhausting. Some days you're just like, oh my gosh, traveling is like a second job. There's a lot of things that happen logistically that it's exhausting. And there's a lot of things that are going to happen. And there can be challenges. And it's beautiful. Yes, there's amazing views, but it also can be a lot of work. Like this place, for example, Torres del Paine, it was like a 8-hour hike day. I was so thankful to be there, but it was raining and there were a lot of people. Just know that the realities of travel is that it is going to test you. And so know your travel limits. Maybe don't overstuff your days so you have more downtime. And also think about this when you are traveling from one place to another, be mindful. We had some really quick turnarounds when we were in Chile where we were using Santiago as a base. So I'll give you an example. We left Atacama at 7, arrived at Santiago around 10 p.m. And then we had a flight the next day at 5. And so, in hindsight, I probably would have broken that out a little bit better and given myself a little more time to sleep. And it was just such a quick turnaround. So, that's why that itinerary really helps that I was talking about. Then you can figure out, like, oh, I need more time and space here. So, yeah, it can be exhausting. And it's a part of the journey, and you'll learn as you go. You'll figure out what works for you, what kind of traveling style you have. So I want to give you those expectations here so you can think about this. And then, of course, the last thing I want to talk about is when you're on your trip to be open to the other cultures and their food and their customs and talking to people and get to know them, going to do things that the locals are doing. People, a lot of times when I travel, they're happy to give you feedback, advice. Talking to people that work at reception, they'll give you great tips. Go to eat to the places where the locals go because you're going to find the authentic experience there. When I was in Morocco, like the food was not only amazing, it had so much flavor, but then when you were shopping in the little bazaars, there was so much stuff that was scented and beautiful. And it was such a cool part of the experience to be like, wow, like how much certain cultures have their own special things that they offer. When we were in the Sahara Desert, we had this pizza that they make there. I think it was called like barber pizza. So, anyways, it just makes that experience that much more rich, the ability to connect with others. And I think that's a big part of the travel experience is to change yourself, right? And how do we change ourselves? We embrace the way of other people. We embrace other culture. We do things a certain way, but the whole world doesn't do it the same way that we do. And I think there's such a great education that I get when I travel, and it really opens up your eyes to the differences in the world. So I really hope that this was helpful as you're continuing to plan and think about traveling. And of course, don't forget to explore the outdoors. Do your 52 hikes when you are out and experience nature. Make time for that, make time to walk. I even count my cultural walks, city walks, when I'm doing my 52 hikes in another country, or we call them urban hikes. And it's such a great way to see the world on foot. It's such a great way to experience the outdoors. And I really hope that this was helpful. Please make sure to share, subscribe, and don't forget to visit us at 52hikechallenge.com and get out there and explore and be a wanderer. I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks so much for being here. I wanted to take a moment to thank this season's Rise and Wander podcast sponsor, REI. REI is the outdoor gear retailer of the 52 Hike Challenge. I've been a member since I started my 52 hikes in 2012, and they've helped outfit me for all things hiking and outdoors since then. Becoming a member has many perks like 10% back annually on eligible purchases, a satisfaction guarantee, which gives you up to a year to return any purchases you aren't satisfied with, free shipping in the US, and so much more. Please visit them at rei.com.